When last we saw the 76ers, it was very much Shake Milton's world. He was awesome in his first game back in more than a week. You could say the same about number 12, wearing the Phil uniform, Tobias Harris. Great to see him back in the fold. Always good to have the positive vibes projected from one Dwight Howard and shared by Ben Simmons at shoot-around earlier today. So I'm Brian Seltzer. Take on the 76ers and 76ers.
They sure do. And severely that bounce on Thursday, and so difficult weekend.
Welcome back some key faces. We'll get into that in a few moments. But all in all, Lauren, a really solid victory for the Sixers. You bring back Shake Milton, Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, playing an undermanned Miami Heat team on Thursday at the center. And the Sixers did exactly what you wanted to see them do. They came out and they really, after a little bit of a tight start, took control of the game and finished off Miami in pretty good fashion.
And look, you never like to see another team as depleted as the Heat were on Tuesday and Thursday, about as depleted as the Sixers were over the weekend. But when you do have those opportunities, which there will probably be more of this season, it was good to see the Sixers capitalize on their advantage when it came to depth and size and talent over those last two games. So to see them get those two wins in those two games that were very winnable games indeed, really, really heartening, especially to see a guy like Tyrese Maxey just explode all week last week. He really showed that he belongs in this league. The young man can simply hoop, which we love to see.
Maxey helped the 76ers get off to a great start in that game. Then Shake Milton took over in the second quarter. Maxey finished with 15, had 11 points in the first, and the Sixers just seemed locked in. And I was really impressed, Lauren, with the way this season began about a month ago, when the Sixers, like all other NBA teams, didn't have much time in training camp or through the preseason to get to know one another. And seemingly, and again, I get what the circumstances were on Thursday night against an undermanned opponent, but without any time at all, the guys who returned really didn't even take part in shoot around that day. They came back out, they were clicking, the chemistry seemed good, and they were able to do what they needed to do. Like, a very nice play right there between the young man Maxey and the, can we call him an old man, Ben Simmons?
It's interesting. You and I have talked about that a few times. Ben and Joel are kind of veterans on this team now, which is crazy to think about, because we always talk about how young they are for how much they have accomplished, and they still are, by every metric, way ahead of schedule when it comes to the average NBA player. But they have become veterans on this team. There's definitely a veteran, Tobias Harris, getting it done. And I like what you said about chemistry, because spending a week apart, this group could have sort of fractured a little bit. And it seemed like they were all really playing together, celebrating one another's success. Isaiah Joe there, one of the standouts from last week for sure. It was cool to hear the veterans postgame talk about how good Isaiah got in the week that they were away. And I think that overall, there was a lot of positive to be taken from what was a very difficult week.
Well, listen, Lauren, we talked about this before, that a team is certainly not in a position to have a season lost by going 1-2 or 1-3 over a 3 or 4 game stretch, like what the 76ers did with half the roster missing. So they weather the storm, they come back, and you certainly don't want to see this at the expense of anyone's health. I don't want to imply that at all. But listen, if the Sixers had to find depth during that time when the roster was half depleted, it seems like they found it. You mentioned Isaiah Joe. I think of the players who are thrust into more minutes. He's the one who could have the most staying time for an expanded role. And I think he was in very many ways a revelation. He showed the skill that the Sixers saw in him coming out of Arkansas, which was his shot. And then it was about doing some other things, handling the ball under pressure, defending a little bit more. And those were really important reps for Isaiah Joe to get.
No doubt. I like what Doc Rivers said after the game about the fact that he won't be afraid to play 10, 11, 12, maybe 13 players in his rotation. He said that because of COVID and because of this condensed, congested schedule that might lead naturally to just more wear and tear injuries, that depth is going to be really important. He said it's a great problem to have, trying to figure out who to play in this rotation. And obviously, Isaiah Joe proved himself worthy of competing for a regular rotation spot. And that's without even thinking about the guys that had been playing ahead of him, a Tyrese Maxey, a Shake Milton, of course, Furkan Korkmaz, who's been out, Matisse Thybulle, who's looking a lot better. So that whole group of younger and youngest guys, let's say, all look like they can rightfully own a few minutes at least per game. And Doc Rivers seemed really happy about it as well.
I think everyone was happy to see a trio of 76ers back in the lineup on Thursday. If we can run down the list of some of the guys that we saw, Tobias Harris, as we spoke about, he put his fingerprints on Thursday's game pretty much right off the bat. He had 9 of his 18 points in the first quarter. Shake Milton, 31 large for the third-year man out of SMU, and then Matisse Thybulle wreaking some havoc on the defensive end of the court. Really great to see a roster that resembled a almost fully fledged and fleshed out NBA roster in that game, Lauren.
And honestly, nice to see Joel Embiid not have to work as hard as he did on Tuesday night. Like, we can't forget, he had 45 points just 48 hours before. So to see all of his teammates really rally and have great performances together on Thursday meant that Joel could take it a little bit easier. And of course, we know Joel is capable of taking over when he needs to, but really cool to see him just not have to take over. I like what you said about the 3 guys that came back into the rotation after a week away. Shake Milton leading the game with 31 points. Matisse Thybulle equaling the Miami Heat in steals with 4 for Matisse, 4 for the Heat. You love to see that from someone who is such an agile defensive specialist. And Tobias, of course, leading the team out the gate. So to see all 3 of them come back into the rotation and really not look like they missed a beat at all was pretty cool. You have to imagine having fresh legs with the congested season that they're playing in. Probably played to those guys' advantage too.
I think a lot of people felt there was a good chance the 76ers would be a deep team coming into this year. And now, being removed from this past week, you might be able to say they're even more deep. And that's something, as you alluded to, Lauren, that Doc Rivers spoke about after the game on Thursday.
It's a major good problem, whatever sense that makes, because with COVID and just early season injuries, you're going to need to be deep. You really are. The fact that we are, Isaiah adds another guy to that rotation. That's really important to us.
And how deep do you feel comfortable going, kind of?
I've never cared, honestly. I don't, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I don't care, I've never had a problem throwing anybody in of a game. You have to look at games as singular sometimes.
Great stuff from Doc Rivers after the win on Thursday. And yeah, listen, if you've got good players, you want to play the good players. And I think any coach would welcome a situation where everyone is forcing him or her to make a tough decision about who you got to play. I think that's a scenario that just about any coach would welcome. We might have lost Lauren's audio there for a second. I hope I'm not talking on top of Lauren. We're going to try and reconnect Lauren and get her back. But I'm sure she was saying something like, you know what, Brian, that's the worst point I ever heard. And I disagree with you entirely. And come on, get out of your chair. No more 7-6 Live Countdown presented by Tissot.
Can you hear me now?
I think we got you. I was just saying you were probably disagreeing with everything that I said and then decided to leave because you were just like, that was the craziest point I've ever heard anyone make.
I was fully agreeing with you. I agree with Doc Rivers as well. A major good problem to have with depth. And Celts, I know you and I both like to sort of peep in the comments on Twitter, on YouTube during these shows. And something that's been a constant has been Tyrese Maxey fans and Matisse Thybulle fans and Isaiah Joe fans wanting to see their favorite players getting more minutes. And you know what? I think those fans are going to get their wish because it looks like those players are going to play maybe a bigger role than we thought they would at the beginning of the season.
Especially in respect to Tyrese Maxey. He has not been doing anything over the last week and a half that would make you think he should not be out there on the court and belonging and having an opportunity to earn minutes. Speaking of what guys have been doing over the last week and a half, why don't you tell us a little bit about Tobias Harris and throw us to this soundbite? Set us up a bit, because one of the best sound bites after the game on Thursday came from our guy, Tobias Harris.
Tobias Harris, to me, is one of the most unintentionally or subtly hilarious guys in this league. I asked Tobias how he stayed in good shape while he was away from the team for a week due to health and safety protocols, and he said he kept busy in a rather unconventional way. Take a listen. Oh,
I may have misspoken.
I'm going to paraphrase
We
it.
may not have that
No,
sound
I'm going
bite.
to paraphrase it
So
instead.
now then I'm going to ask you to paraphrase.
I left the tease of like, how did he stay in shape? Well, here's how he stayed in shape. He said he was moving boxes up and down the stairs in his new house. He was taking out the trash. He was doing all sorts of household chores that I'm sure whoever else was there really appreciated. And it was funny to hear Tobias sort of snap back at, or at least maybe look for a little praise for all the work he was doing around the house. And I say he deserves it. It sounds like he was doing some heavy lifting.
I'm trying to put my finger on how to describe Tobias's humor, because I think he's definitely trying to throw some subtle, dry rubs in there every now and then. But he's just like, it's not even so much what he's saying, it's how he's saying it.
Absolutely. He's dry, but he's really funny. And we know Tobias is just very intelligent. His mind is always working around the clock. And so anytime he gets to sort of slide a little humor in there, I love to see it. The same way he's not super demonstrative on the court, but when he does celebrate, it means something really good has happened. So the more we get to know Tobias, the more we get to love Tobias. He's such a great person off the court to have in this locker room as a leader. And luckily this season he's been playing maybe the best of his career self.
I would say so. And I would also say this about the game on Thursday night. If ever a triple-double could get lost in the fray, I think it did on Thursday. That was like, you go through the checklist of storylines from the game. Shake was number one. Some of the guys off the bench or just who stepped in might have been number two, whether that was someone like, Isaiah Joe turning more heads, or Tyrese Maxey continuing the starting role, or Tobias coming back. And then there was just Ben Simmons. I thought an extremely professional performance by Ben Simmons on Thursday. And he picked up triple-double, number 30 on his career.
Yeah, really great to see Ben excel where he excels best, which is everywhere. It was cool to see Ben get that second triple-double at a historic rate as well. He's doing it quicker than just about, two other players in the NBA ever has. So to see him get that triple-double now twice this season, to see him sharing the ball, getting his teammates involved, these are the things he says he really prides himself on. And he did an excellent job of finding guys like Danny Green all night on Thursday.
Listen, he was at a different level defensively, I thought, in terms of his intensity, made things very difficult for the likes of Tyler Hero and the Miami Heat. And he just left his fingerprint in a lot of different areas of the game with 10 points, 10 boards, and 12 assists. I think it's almost like maybe we hear so much about the exceptional statistical superlatives when it comes to Ben Simmons that we lose sight of appreciating them. And for him to reach 30 triple-doubles at the historic rate that he did, it tells you that he is an uncanny and different type of player.
He is just so talented on both ends of the floor. You've used this phrase before, but he's the straw that stirs the drink for this team. Ben can really do it all on both ends of the floor. He's one of the best defenders in the league, and he's dishing out triple-doubles every night. It's really, really cool to see him excelling in so many different areas. He's truly a unique talent, and I, for one, am very happy to have him as a 76er.
I would concur. Speaking of which, let's get to Ben Simmons.
Cares.
And yeah, no, I think there are a lot of people, including him, in agreement. After the game, listen, we've heard a lot over the last 6 weeks about the relationship that Doc and Ben Simmons have developed, and Ben Simmons spoke more about that following Thursday's win.
Yeah, Doc keeps it real with me. He keeps it straight. He wants to see me get better, improve, and stay in the gym, continue to work. But yeah, the relationship is growing with Doc. I think so far I've learned a lot. I think that goes down to even just professionalism, how I carry myself. The way I play and come out, what energy I have, is going to affect others on the floor. So if I come out especially on the defensive end, playing great defense. I feel like my teammates are going to keep that same energy, and it's going to get us wins and take us far.
Well put by Ben Simmons. Couldn't agree more. Extremely professional performance and approach by him on Thursday. Let's go back to Shake Milton, Lauren. He's just been fantastic with every opportunity he's received, going back to the middle of last year after the All-Star break when he said, you know what, I'm getting myself back into the rotation. I'm going to pretend I know what Lauren's talking about because we're so in sync and we rehearsed this stuff so much that she was going to say, yes, Shake's been doing great, fantastic. And now I'm going to throw it to my interview that I did with Shake earlier today after shooting.
Hey, Shake, good to see you. How did it feel to spend a week away from the game and from your teammates and then come back in on Thursday and perform at such a high level the way that you did?
Just kind of being out there, and then the first time you get up and down the floor, it just feels like basketball again. First shot went in and just kind of got into a rhythm. It felt good. My teammates just kept encouraging me, and coaches did the same. It was fun.
Speaking of those teammates, you're not really one of the young guys anymore on this team. So how impressed have you been by the rookies and the youngsters that came in while you guys were gone and really found a rhythm themselves?
Yeah, they did their thing. They did exactly, they put in all kinds of work. I've seen it, we've seen it. And it was good to see them come out there and have their opportunity and to see them make the most of it. But yeah, I just, we see how hard they work, and so it was well deserved.
Awesome. Thank you, Shake.
Great stuff between Shake Milton and Lauren Rosen after today's shoot-around. We're trying to effort getting Lauren back. So let us shift now to talking about the Memphis Grizzlies, a team that I think surprised a lot of people last year by making a pursuit and push for the playoffs in really what I think going in people thought was going to be a rebuilding season. They had the Rookie of the Year, Ja Morant, a really young, talented kid who's been out for a bit with an ankle injury, and he was questionable going into tonight's game. Memphis actually, as we bring in Lauren back, welcome back, Lauren. Memphis had its game postponed at Minnesota last night. So that's an interesting wrinkle into this game that maybe they would have been coming in on the second night of a back-to-back. Instead, they're even going to be that much more fresh coming into tonight's game. But Memphis, it's an interesting team. They've won 3 in a row, Lauren, and they've got some momentum coming into this evening.
Well, the Grizzlies are young. They are tough. They were one of the most fun teams to watch last season, obviously exceeded expectations when they were supposed to finish at the bottom of their division and ended up being able to go to the bubble and compete for a spot in the playoffs. Really cool to see their young guys like a Ja Morant, a Jaren Jackson, really show what they can do in this league in a challenging Western Conference. So unclear about whether or not we'll see Ja Morant tonight, but they are young, they are hungry, and they play really fun basketball. So it'll be interesting to see how these two teams match up.
He did tweet last night, add roster spots, please, and thank you, perhaps signaling a bigger indication to the league, not necessarily so much about whether or not he's returning. I am excited to see the Grizzlies tonight because if I'm following the game notes correctly, they have their old throwback Vancouver Grizzly era jerseys on the game notes. And for me, I'm a big fan of the throwback Grizz look. Very big fan.
It did look like they had that court down during Sixers shoot-around this morning. So I would say that that's a pretty good bet. It seems like the evidence would suggest that they are going to wear those Vancouver throwbacks, which are really cool. I know the Sixers will be in white, so we'll have some interesting contrast in playing style and in uniform style. I don't know, that might be a stretch. But either way, it'll be an interesting game to watch for visual fashion purposes and for the basketball.
So Memphis trying to turn things around. We're going to do our Tissot Keys to the game. I will start tonight. And my key to this evening's game for the 76ers is protect the paint. Last year, the Memphis Grizzlies, #1 in the NBA in points scored in the paint per game, right around 56, the highest total going back to the 96-97 season. And this year, they're #2 in the NBA at around 54.5 points scored in the paint per game. Going to be tough without Joel Embiid tonight. They do have Dwight Howard. Protect the paint.
right at the buzzer. That was perfect. That was a good one.
On to
My
you.
key to the game is on the offensive end. I said shooters shoot, and they got to keep on shooting. Someone we haven't talked about tonight on our show, Danny Green, set a career high with 9 threes against Miami in the team's first outing. So really cool to see his confidence continue to be high. And Isaiah Joe has been great. It's cool to see the Sixers find shooting from their veterans and their young guys. And if they're going to compensate for not having Joel's paint points, they're going to need those points from deep.
Points, paint points, all the points. We know Joel Embiid can score them.
Paints.
Love it. So yeah, Joe not on the trip. Neither is Mike Scott. 76ers, just when it seemed like they were getting back to full strength, now have to deal with managing those 2 absences, at least for this road trip, which wraps up tomorrow against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then mercifully, the 76ers will have consecutive days without a game for the first time since Christmas. They have been grinding hard, and they are in grind city tonight. So I think it's a Saturday. I think we found out tonight the internet gods went to happy hour early. They were not by our side tonight. So everyone who did stream along with us, thank you for your patience. We'll have to, the internet powers, they owe us one.
Maybe the Sixers will get the power that we might not have had tonight. Thank you guys for bearing with me with my technical difficulties. Always a pleasure to do this show. And yeah, thanks for following along. Thanks for being here. Hope everybody is staying safe and healthy, because that's the most important thing. And thank you, Celts, for carrying us tonight.
Bye-bye.